All right, so we're ready to get started on the bag. Here is all of my fabrics that I've already pre-cut and laid out, and I'm ready to start assembling my body of my bag, my quilt. This is a perfect project to do if you have a little bit of leftover. For the main body, a half a yard of fabric or even 2 fat quarters is plenty of fabric for this. And then a little bit of extra for the binding. So I have my binding pieces. These are 2.5 inch strips already cut out, and I will trim those down as I go. I have my pieces cut for the little fabric handles, and I also have my my fusible. I'm using lightweight fusible interfacing. To me, I think it's plenty heavy enough to give my straps a little bit of body to them, so they're not so floppy. So I have that and already done, and then I also have my zipper. Now this is about a 24-inch zipper. It is, as you can see, it's, let me move this out of the way. You can see there's plenty of room, but I like to have, I like to have more than enough excess on the top and the bottom to work with. And so, I mean, you can use a smaller one because the length of this that we're going to be working is 12 inches. So this is plenty of additional zipper to work with. And then I also have my quilt batting. So I'm using just a piece of leftover quilt batting from one of my quilts. But if you don't want to use quilt batting, you can use something like this. It's a fusible foam. You can also use the fusible fleece. It comes in one-sided fusible, it comes in two-sided fusible, and it also comes in sew-in. So there's a lot of options. You don't have to use the quilt batting if you don't want to. All right, so I'm going to get started. Oh, the last thing is for the quilt batting, I always use 505 spray. This is my go-to for sandwiching my quilts. And I started out using this for machine embroidery. I do a lot of hooping. Whenever I do my hooping, I do a lot of floating. So I've been using this for more than 10 years. I have everything already cut out. So I'm going to get my base piece laid down. And then I gave it a little spray off camera. But I'll check and see if it needs, like this needs a little bit. I don't really like to spray so close to my machines because you do get residue. So I prefer to do this outside. And I may have to clean it off of my cutting mat. Okay, so then I'll flip it over. And I don't really have directional fabric, so I don't have to worry too much about, my prints going upside down or sideways or anything like that. Okay, now for this pattern, I'm going to just do 1 inch. Okay, now for this pattern, I'm going to just do 1 inch. I'm just going to do 1 inch diamond grid. So I'm going to be using my walking foot with this, but I need to get the first one planned out. So for this, the fabric is light enough. I'm going to use my friction pen, and this is a heat activated pen. So once heat hits it, it dissolves. But honestly, I've never had any issue with it, but if you have fabric that is, very delicate, or you would hate for it to possibly get ruined, I would definitely not use this, even though I've never had an issue with it. And I've done plenty of quilts where I've started out something like this and I've marked with it. In the event that it wouldn't come out, I would hate for it to ruin something that really was an irreplaceable fabric. So that's how I'm going to start, and then I'm going to take this over to the machine, and I have my walking foot already attached, so I can get started all of my grid work there. Okay. And I'm just going to follow that line. So I'm gonna move this over just a tad. Okay. But now I'm just going to use my little marker here and follow this line. And I'm going to do this all the way across. And I want to keep checking and making sure that it's not, the bottom piece is not like flipping over, it's getting caught anywhere. So now's the time to flip it over, make sure that you didn't get anything tucked underneath of the fabric, tucked underneath of itself. And then I'm going to go back. I want this in like a diamond pattern, so I'm going to do that and come right back. Okay, so that is all done and it's time to trim. Okay, so I have my base piece quilted and it's time to cut it to size. Now I'm going to find where my edge is and I'm going to start with that. Because I have this in diamonds, I'm going to use that as a way to line up and make sure that everything is going straight, because this will drive me absolutely bonkers. Okay, so this is my base piece. I'm going to get ready and I'm going to attach my zipper. So for this, I need 2 pieces. I've already pre-cut these. Since this is 12 inches, I cut this just a little bit wider. I think this is like 14. It's more than I need, but I'm going to press it in half just like I do my normal binding. All right, so now I'm going to attach my binding, and you're going to do this just like you normally do for a quilt. Okay, so now that I have sewed my binding, I've attached it to the front, I'm going to just flip it around to the back. And I'm going to go ahead and put a few clips in this to hold it in place, to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. And I'm going to clip the other side as well. Okay, so check the back, make sure that it's all attached. It is. Okay, so now the next step is to attach the body of my bag to my zipper. Now, this zipper is like 24 inches long. I only have 12 inches here, so I have plenty of excess. So I'm going to line this up with the teeth. And I'm just going to give a little clip. Actually, I'm going to use these longer clips. just so it kind of holds it in place. And then I'm going to take it over to the machine and I'm going to get it sewn. Okay, so we have a nice even zipper, and now I'm going to do the other side. Okay, so I have one side sewn, and now I'm going to flip it to the other. And the only thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to visually line up the edge. So this isn't too difficult to do because I can just follow the hard edge. And you can see it lines right up. Let's get that thread out of the way. And then I'm going to use a clip. And I'm going to clip this at the bottom so it doesn't go anywhere. And then you can see at the top. I'm going to give a little clip here. And then right along, this is a little bit harder to do. So I'm just going to give a few little pins to kind of keep it in place. Okay, now this will just keep it, keep it really from moving too much, more the top and the bottom. All right, so now I have to open this zipper all the way up. This is why I like a longer zipper, because it's much easier to work with. And then I'm going to open it up and take it back over to the machine and finish my zipper. I'm going to have to undo that to get it out of the way. And now your zipper's has been sewn and it's completely done, and we're ready to get the bag put together. Okay, so now we have our zipper in, and I'm going to go ahead and trim off a little bit of this excess. We don't need it. And right now my zipper pulls at the top, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this inside out, and we're going to work on finishing off the seams. So we need to find the midway point of my bag. So I'm just going to turn it inside out, fold it in half, and you can either mark it with a pen, mark it with a piece of chalk, or I usually just put needles. I usually just put a pin in it. And you're going to do the same thing on the other side. Fold that zipper in half, find the middle, and then mark it. Okay, now once you mark it, we're going to start with the bottom and get it sewn first. We're going to get it marked first. So you just take that middle, I line up the pin with the middle of the teeth of my zipper, and then get a couple pins and then just pin it in place. Okay, now you do the same thing with the other end. Now keep in mind your zipper pulls up here, so we will have to deal with that. Okay, so now on this side, I'm going to go ahead and start with this side just to get it out of the way. your zipper pull is pulled all the way up. When we go to sew it, you have to move the zipper pull down. If you don't move it down, you're going to sew straight through your zipper, and there's going to be no way to open your bag. You're going to sew your bag closed. So I'm going to take a pin. Actually, I can take that one out, because I want to keep this, I want to keep my zipper pull where it is. And then I'm just going to open this up. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing. I'm just going to open this up and just give this zipper pull a little shove. And you can see it from the other side. And we're just going to move it down just enough to get it out of the way. Because if you don't do this and you sew through it, your bag's not going to open. All right, so I've got the top and the bottom ready, so I'm going to take it back over to the machine and sew a 1/4 inch on each side, top and bottom, and then we'll do our binding. All right, so I'm going to start with that other edge. I have my, actually sometimes I clip these together just to make sure that they don't pull apart any more than necessary. And I'm going to do that 1/4 inch. When you get to the zipper, go slow and take your time, and because you can sew over the zipper, but you have to be careful because you can still hit the needle. I'm going to turn it on the other side and do it again. So again, be careful going over that zipper and over those pins. Now I'm going to measure across here, and it should be 9 inches. So I've already pre-cut on that list of, on your list of fabric requirements that you had, we already had it set for the 9 inch. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that. Now these are my pieces of binding that I already pre-cut to 9 inches. So I'm going to fold them in half and press them. And I'll be right back to put the binding on. So attaching at a 1/4 inch. Be careful going over that zipper. And we're going to trim this extra off. We don't need it. It's just in the way. And we're going to flip it over and do the other side. So then I'm going to wrap it around, and I'm going to switch my foot back. You don't have to switch the feet back and forth. It's not a necessary thing. I just like to do it. Now, a piece of advice, there are 2 ways to do this. When I attach quilt binding, I normally sew this way, and I put a seam, I put my little seam, I try to kind of stitch in the ditch a little bit so that it's not visible. So you can, it's up to you how you want to do it. You can sew it this way, you can try to sew along the edge, or you can flip it over and you can sew from the back. So that is 100% up to you how you wish to attach your binding piece. Okay, so that is all nice and even, and now we're ready to do the corners. So I'm going to meet you back over at the cutting table and we're going to get that started. Okay, so back at the cutting table, I have my bag. Go ahead and open a little bit more. You can see it's all nice and tucked in there. And so we're ready to do the corners. So the first thing, now you can, for this bag, this is one of my previous ones, I did 2-inch corners. So if you want your bag to be a little bit wider and a little shorter, then you can make your corners a little smaller. That will change the dimensions of the bag. So for this one, I kind of like the way it is, so I'm going to keep it this way. So I'm going to go right along where I did that 1/4-inch seam, and I'm going to line up 2 inches along here and 2 inches along the edge. And I'm going to use this water-soluble marker. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do the same thing on all 4 corners. So you can mark them all out. You can use your scissors and cut them out. You can use your ruler and your rotary cutter. If you do it this way, just be careful. Don't go all the way to the corner, because you're going to go through the fabric. Whoops. So I will show you. So when I use the rotary cutter, I left this little corner that I can now nip it with the scissors, because I don't want to cut anymore. I want to cut the least amount of fabric. So okay, so my corners are done, and the next thing I have to do is these straps. So the straps on this bag, I made 5 inches. The ones on this bag, it's for somebody else and I want them to be a little bit longer, so I'm going to do 6 inches. So I've pre-cut my fabric 4 inches wide, 4 inches tall by 6 inches wide. And I've already lined it with my featherweight, with the featherweight stabilizer. So I'm just going to fold this in half. I'm going to do this over at my ironing board. But what I'm doing is I'm going to fold it in half, and then I'm going to open it up and I'm going to fold it in half again, till I have a 1-inch strap. So let me go do my ironing and I'll be right back. Okay, so I have pressed my handles. As you can see, I just folded towards the middle and folded again and then folded over. So I have about a 1-inch handle. And I'm going to run over to the machine. I'm going to stitch down both sides to make it nice and neat, and then we're going to attach them. Okay, so I have both my handles done, and now I'm ready to pop this bag open. And I'm going to go ahead and just put a clip and a clip. And then I want my opening to be facing down. So I'm just going to put that through, kind of line up the center, because right here is my center line. So I'm going to try to line that up to the center the best I can. and then clip it in place with this big clip. Then I'm going to turn it over to the other side and do the same thing. Try to line it up to about the center. I'm going to get both of them ready, and just like before, this is the top, and I want that open seam to be towards the back. So I'm going to try to center it. Okay, so now I'm going to take this back over to the machine, and I'm going to go through all of these layers of fabric. So it's a lot to get through. Okay, and I want this to go down, so I'm going to kind of start this way. It's just easier for me to do it like that. Now I'm going to start there. I've got my 1/4 inch. Probably should have put my and careful going over this because it's a lot of fabric. Now on this side, it's going to be harder to get. If I start and go from this way, when I turned it around, if I go this direction, I want this binding part to be laying down, and it's going to be a little bit harder to go over. It's kind of like going against the grain. So what I'm going to do on this side is I'm going to flip it to the opposite direction. And I'm going to sew from behind. So now when I get to this piece, it's already laying the direction I want it to go. Careful. And then we're going to flip it and do the other side. Careful, keep it on my. Okay, so this is completely done. Last thing we need to do is we're going to bind off these seams because I don't want to leave this mess inside my bag. I mean, you could zigzag it and be done with it if you don't care, but I kind of do care. All right, so binding. You can see that this is just over 4 inches. We cut our binding strips to 6 inches. That way it gives me plenty of excess to cut off. It's easier to have a little bit too much than not enough. So okay, so now we're just going to grab our binding, and here's all my binding strips. I have 4 of them. I need to fold them in half and press them, and I'll be right back. Okay, so now I'm just going to attach my binding strips. Just kind of center it on there. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I'm going to attach all of them. You just want to have enough excess that when you turn it, you can tuck this in and make it a nice seam, a nice finished edge to your bag. Okay, so all of my binding is clipped on. I'm going to go back over to the machine and get this sewn in place. And don't forget to be mindful of, it's a lot of fabric to go over. All right, now this one, I'm going to turn it upside down, do it from the back. forget to be careful going over that large mass of fabric. You have to just slow, you will catch your needle, or break it, and then just line on your face. Careful. Easy job with your wrist. Okay, so this part, I'm going to switch my presser foot back out. And this part, I'm just going to pull it over. I'm going to kind of tuck this in. You see it kind of makes a little envelope, and then we're going to fold it down. And then I'm going to pinch it. And I'm going to get a clip, and I'm going to clip it right there in place. And then the other side, I don't need that much, so I'm going to trim a little bit off of it. And again, I'm going to pull it in and kind of angle it down just enough, because I don't want it really coming out the top. And then pull it over. And hold it in place. And then the rest of it I can kind of pull a little tighter to get it down over top of so much of that fabric. I'm going to use a stronger clip. Okay, so then I'm going to have to move this, so hold it in place. And then you're just going to stitch kind of close to the edge. And remove your clips as you're going. Be really careful going over this big, massive amount of fabric. Oops. And just hold that down. Hold it tight. Trying to keep my hands out of the way. And let's see. I'll put my stiletto here so you can see. And I'm going to back stitch a little bit. And I'm going to do that on all four sides. Very slow. On top of that. And once you get that, hold on to it real good. Keep your fingers out of the way. If you need to, you can use something like slow. Hold down. Alright, so I'm going to clip the rest off and get it. And get it stuck. And last line. Very easy. Okay, so I'm gonna just take my little nippers here, get rid of any loose threads. Get it cleaned up. Oops. Okay, now I'm going to turn it right side out. And this is our finished bag. so here is our finished bag. And you can see how I did this a little bit different. I made the handles a little wider on this. So here's the two bags. They are exactly the same size. This handle had a 5-inch handle, and this one went with 6, so it gave me a little bit more room on the handle. So I'm going to go ahead and finish it, and the last thing I'm going to do like this, I'll put a little tassel on it to make it look cute, and then it is completely finished. Okay, so here is the finished bag. You can see I used a little bit longer handles on this one. This one I cut to 6 inches. This bag I cut at 5, so it's pretty tight, but I think it still fits with the bag. The other thing you can tell between the two of them is what I used for the inside. This one, hopefully it's coming across on the video, it's a lot softer. And this was the quilt, just the regular cotton quilt batting. This one is a little bit spongier. I don't know how else to describe it. It's got a little more, it has more structure to it, although it's not hard, but it's definitely a spongier bag. And this one I used the fusible foam. So exact same pattern, just with two different inside materials, and the only other thing was the difference in the length of my handle. So you can decide that on your own. Thanks again for watching. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below, and hopefully we will see you back on another tutorial.